And it was given by Yahweh to Yahshua, and Yahshua gave it to John. Now these are things that were to come to pass, or are to come to pass in the last days. They're highly symbolical. We find that actually without Yahweh's Spirit, without Yahweh's interpretation given, no one understands Revelation. There's no one on earth that really understands it unless it is a prophet of Israel, and he is definitely blessed with Yahweh's Spirit. Because I've tried this over and over again. I met ministers, and I've met theological professors and everything else, and they're all confused. In fact, as I was bringing out last time, I think, that I was supposed to debate a Catholic priest on the book of Revelation, and he actually disqualified himself, realizing that he just couldn't handle it, didn't have it together. And I had studies with another priest. I had 10 studies, and it turned out that I gave the 10 studies that he didn't feel qualified to give any of them. In other words, I gave him full opportunity to give his explanation, but it just didn't fit. So these are highly symbolical terms that are used, and there's a reason for it. You might say Yahweh is unjust. You might say, how in the world do you expect to understand anything if he uses the sea to represent people, restless people, if he uses the beast to represent a world power, if he uses horns to represent power, if he uses 7 to represent heavenly completeness and all these things, how in the world are you ever going to understand? You might say Yahweh is not just, because if he was a just God, he'd make it clear to us. Well, this is not the thing. Yahweh has evil and good on this earth. There are evil people and there are righteous people. There are people who want to know, and there are people who do not care to know. So he puts it in a way that is impossible to understand. But he does give the interpretation. Now this is the beautiful part of it. This is the justice of Yahweh. He gives the absolute clear-cut understanding, and he does this through his prophets. It begins through his prophets, and then it goes on, spreads to Israel. And Israel will spread it throughout the earth, and the entire world will understand what Yahweh is talking about here. So he doesn't keep it hidden forever. But he does say, I will reveal these, you have kept these things hidden from the wise and the prudent. These are the educated men, the theological, the professors, the ones who've gone to college and the theological seminaries, and these are the elite, the men of the cloth. He says, you have kept these things hidden from the wise and the prudent and revealed them unto babes. Unimportant. Somebody that's low in the social register, somebody who hasn't gone to college even. All of the apostles and the prophets, they were not men of the cloth. Yet we find that the time of Yahshua, we find that the most educated, the ones who taught the Bible, actually did not understand it. And Yahshua, who had no education, made fools of them. So this is the way it goes. In other words, Yahweh does the educating. So in this 13th chapter of Revelation, we have to understand the symbol. Now, John, he was imprisoned on an island, the island of Patmos, for preaching. In other words, instead of putting him in jail, they isolated him on an island so he couldn't talk to anybody. And he says, and I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Okay, now Yahweh showed him these things. Now, a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, it actually has nothing to do with the fulfillment of prophecy, because it's not literal beasts, not literal dragons or weird creatures that's going to have anything to do in understanding the Scriptures or obeying the living God or going down at Armageddon. It has to do with man and with his obedience or disobedience on earth at the time of his life. So a beast we find in Daniel represents a world power. We find that there was the beast of Babylon, there was the beast of Medo-Persia, there was the beast of Greece. He speaks of the beast and then he names them. He tells us that they are. He names the world powers that they represent. Now, the reason he uses the term beast is because, like a beast, these world powers are selfish, cruel, do not recognize their God, and conduct themselves altogether as beasts. So he refers to a world power. Now, this particular beast had unusual qualities. He saw it rise up out of the sea. Now, the sea represents something. He says, I saw new heavens and a new earth, and there was no more sea. Well, he says the wicked are like the restless sea, which are dashing to and fro. In other words, people who are not at ease, people who do not know where they're coming or going, are always restless. And if you look at the sea, it's never still. So Yahweh uses this term to represent restless masses of humanity. Okay? Now, this beast had 7 heads. Now, the head is the seat of intelligence. The number 7 symbolizes heavenly completeness. This means that this beast claimed to have complete heavenly understanding. It was a Christian beast, apparently a godly beast, but it wasn't Yahweh's, because Yahweh would not have called it a beast. But it did claim to have complete religious understanding. Coming up out of the sea means that it came up out of the restless masses of humanity. We find that the only beast that did come up, which claimed to have complete heavenly wisdom, was the Holy Roman Empire. This claimed to be the first church. The Pope claims to be the vicegerent of Christ, the representative of Christ on earth. He claims he is a descendant. He actually is a descendant of the popes. That he is sitting in authority, and this authority is given to him by God. So he claims to have wisdom from above. All right, now the Holy Roman Empire started with a restless mass of humanity when political Rome had fallen. When political Rome fell, we find that there was no longer any central government. The people banded together with one rich man or one warrior just for protection, or to gain a living, or to go and raid different places and rob and just to exist. There was no government. And everything was the most restless that it could ever have been, because it was the collapse of an entire empire, and this empire had controlled the entire known earth. So when Rome fell, everything went to chaos. Okay, so it came out of the restless masses of humanity. Now we find when the papacy came up, it began to organize things. And it used the same methods that the political Rome did, and it wasn't long before it had a working organization where the church was in command. It actually gave instructions to the emperors, to the kings. It would crown the kings. It had supreme authority because he threatened them with excommunication if they didn't obey. Now, it had 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, 7 is a heavenly number, so it had 7, indicating it claimed to have complete heavenly wisdom. The horns symbolize power. He says he will cut off the horns of the wicked. Horns are used by beasts to shove their way around, to shove other beasts away and have their own way. So it symbolizes power. Now, having 10 horns, 10 symbolizes complete earthly power. So this beast had complete earthly power. It claimed to have complete heavenly wisdom, and it had complete earthly power. So this was the case with the Holy Roman Empire. There were all the nations, all the major nations were Catholic at one time. England was Catholic, Denmark and Norway and Sweden, and all of the major nations were under the Holy Roman Empire. Germany, all of them. So it had complete power. And it says, upon his horns 10 crowns, indicating authority, complete authority. The crowns symbolize authority. And upon his head the name of blasphemy. Now remember we said that the 7 heads symbolize complete heavenly wisdom. But Yahweh writes blasphemy on each one of its heads. Liar, fraud. In other words, he did not have complete heavenly wisdom. He just claimed this. In other words, it claimed to be a Christian organization or a religious organization from the Almighty God, but it was not. He was a liar. So Yahweh puts blasphemy, liar, fraud on each one of its heads. Now, the Lord's people understand this, but the ones in darkness do not. They still think that the Catholic Church is the right church. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. Okay, now, a leopard is a sly, untrustworthy creature. They say concerning the leopard, he never changes spots, indicating that he just never changes his ways. You cannot trust them at all. They've been known to lay in trees, and when a man walks underneath, they just fall on him, break his neck. They don't know where it came from. Very sneaky creatures. This Holy Roman Empire had the characteristics of a leopard. Very sly, sneaky. What they'd actually do is have people listening in. If anybody was teaching the scriptures, like I'm doing, he'd be reported. First thing you know, the priest would come in the Inquisition, he'd be judge and jury, and if the crime was not too bad, I would be exiled, sent out of the country. I'd have to leave my home and family and everything else. But if it was serious enough, they just tie you to a tree and pile wood around you and set you on fire alive. This is what they did. They were horrible. Then they take the body, and the blackened body, and hang it in the marketplace where all the people were walking and say, see, God's vengeance. They attribute that to God. They had done it, but they said God did it because he went against the church. They were horrible, horrible creatures. His feet were as the feet of a bear. Now, a bear fights with its feet. You heard the bear hug and how with the long nails and how it tears. So it fights with its feet, means it was destructive. And his mouth is the mouth of a lion. Okay, primarily the lion strikes terror with its roar. When the lion roars, it's been known that all the creatures around just freeze from fear. They've been known to get under a tree with monkeys and just let out a roar. And monkeys just drop. And then they just catch them. In other words, this indicates supreme authority, the authority of a threatening government. It's something like, you might say, the Internal Revenue come after you. Everybody's scared. It's symbolized here like the roar of a lion. People are afraid. Or the FBI, they're terrified of these things. Well, it symbolizes a government which makes threats to the people. And the dragon, or the devil, gave him his power and his seat and great authority. So you see, it's not God's organization. The dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. It was the devil. Now, Revelation 12:9 says that the devil has deceived the whole world. The apostle says, we know we're of God, and the whole world lies in the wicked one. See? So the whole world belongs to the devil. So any organization that comes up in this world, before the world goes down, it's got to be of the devil. And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wandered after the beast. Okay, now 7 heads claiming to have complete heavenly wisdom. One of its heads is wounded. The number 7 is no longer there. This means it can no longer claim to have complete heavenly wisdom. Something happens to it. Okay, what did happen is the rise of Protestantism, the Reformation. There was a 30 years war. The Protestants won. The Pope was now no longer universally recognized as the supreme authority of the church. So he lost his claim to having complete heavenly wisdom. But he says his deadly wound was healed, indicating that it goes back to 7, indicating that he's reinstated at some time. This is what we're waiting for now, when the Pope comes up again. His deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered or marveled after the beast. All the world. What world? Satan's world. The world made up of the ignorant masses of humanity who don't know the truth. They wonder. They marvel when they see this marvelous stroke that is made by the Catholic Church, how it again is able to encompass the entire earth. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? They worship the dragon. Well, now, the worship of Yahweh, what is required to worship Yahweh is obedience. Yahweh expects obedience. Now, the Bible says you are the servant of him whom you obey. If you obey the devil, you're the servant of the devil. You're worshiping the devil. If you do everything that the world tells you, and this world belongs to the devil, and you ignore the living God, you are the servant of the devil. Now, the people of the world who are ignorant of the truth, who obey the devil when he makes this organization, are actually worshiping the devil. It says, and they worship the dragon which gave power unto the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? All right, now, who is like to the beast? What beast? Well, this is the beast that is formed by the Catholic Church. In other words, when they make one, when they unite the world into one, people will say, there's nothing like this. There's never been anything like this. Who can make war with him? Who can make war with one? How is one going to fight? You got to have 2 or 3 to fight. So they actually think that it's solved when the world does unite. All right? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. Okay, in other words, he was allowed to speak his claims. He was allowed to say such things as, I am the vicegerent of Christ. I am the representative of Christ on earth. I am sitting on the throne of Peter, the first pope. We are the first church and the only church, and anyone who wandered away from the Catholic Church is a heretic, and you've got to come back to the first church if you want God's blessings. See? And he'll continue making these claims. This is what he means with he was given a mouth speaking great things, and blasphemies were making great claims. And power was given unto him to continue 42 months. In other words, when he makes this organization, all he lasts is 42 months. That's all. He comes up quickly and goes down quickly. So even though the world is united and people say we finally got it solved, there's no more war, the world is now one. All that peace lasts is 42 months or 3.5 years. And then it begins to break up. So it isn't very long. And it's beautiful because it gives the Lord's people a chance to survive. Because if this thing was to last 1,000 years, like the first Holy Roman Empire did, there'd be not much chance for the kingdom. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. Now he's not so stupid as to say, I'm against God. What the blasphemy that he does, that he speaks, is by making claims for himself which were never given to him by God. He claims to have powers given by God that are supreme powers. He claims all these positions for himself, and this authority for himself. And in so doing, he blasphemes God. He makes a reproach of God. People will say, how in the world could God put a man like that in authority? If you look back at the history of the Catholic Church, where the most sincere people were actually burned to death, and where they had the wars, where the Crusades, where they actually invaded a country that was not Catholic, and they slaughtered the people, they raped the women, they robbed them, they did everything in the name of the cross. How in the world did Christ ever do a thing like that? Did any of the apostles murder anybody to make them understand? You can't do those things. So if you look back at the history, of the Catholic Church, you find out that someone like that, if God put him in authority, it would be a reproach. He wouldn't be the just God that he claims to be. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints. Now here's a religious organization that makes war with the saints. So you know something is wrong. It claims to have complete heavenly wisdom, but it makes war with the saints, with God's people. So you can see where the blasphemy fits in. He wrote blasphemy on each one of its heads. It claims to be Christian, but it is not, because it fights God's people. And if it were to be truly God's church, it would not fight God's people. All right. He was given power to make war with the saints and to overcome them. This means he does conquer us. He does silence us completely during these 42 months. It'll be done by force. He'll have the backing of the world powers of Russia, United States, and he will say these people must be stopped, and the world powers will carry out his orders. The excuse will be that these people are causing dissension. They're threatening the peace of the world. We must not allow them to speak these things that the world is going to go down. We must educate the people that the world must unite in order to survive. So they stop us. And we are stopped. But the funny thing about it is, even though we're stopped, the world goes down. So it's not the speaking. You know, it's just the organization is just it's not adequate. So it says, it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. All right? This means that the entire world is included. None of the world is left out. When he unites the world, he unites them all. So this is an organization like the world has never seen before. This is the supreme effort of the devil to unite the world and to stamp out the Lord's people. It's you might say, like a millionaire buying up all the land so that nobody else can move in. Yahweh says, woe unto him, to those who lay house to house and field to field till there is no room. Means that they squeeze everything else out. Well, this is what they do. They make a universal organization. They make laws that everyone must conform to, or they will be completely cut off. Now, Daniel says concerning this in 7:23, he says, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse or different from all the kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. In other words, he devours the whole earth, or takes in the whole earth. So when he says it be every kingdom, nation, and tongue, he does mean the entire world. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And anyone whose name is written in the book of life means it is those who have met with Yahweh's approval. Those whose names are not written in the book of life are those who have not met with Yahweh's approval. So, to meet with Yahweh's approval, you must understand. To understand, you must obey. To obey, you must understand. To understand, you must naturally study. Study to show yourself approved unto God, Paul says. So, the ones that are not written in the book of life are all those who do not accept the truth. All those who are part of the world. They worship him, they obey him. They are part of the organization. But the ones who are written in the book of life do not worship him, do not obey him. This is why we are going to be cut off. This is why they won't even let us work here. And we will be forbidden to speak. So there'll be a great division made between the Lord's people and the devil's people. If any man have an ear, let him hear. Okay, in other words, if you have ears, pay attention, because this is most urgent, especially today, because we're right in the time of fulfillment now. And Yahweh makes it clear in these last days when it's about to be fulfilled, when it's going to affect your very lives. So he gives us hope and says, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. This is what this beastly organization does. It captivates everybody. It's going to go into captivity. He that killeth with a sword must be killed with a sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. In other words, we have faith and patience because we know it's going to go down. If we didn't know, if we thought it was going to last another 1,000 years, there wouldn't be much hope. But we know what Yahweh says. It's going to come up, yes, but it's only going to last 3.5 years. And while we're in the mountains, we are just waiting a short time, and we have faith and patience because Yahweh tells us that it'll go down very shortly. Now, from the beginning to this verse, Yahweh has described the rise of the Holy Roman Empire, the loss of its complete claim to heavenly wisdom by losing one of its heads being wounded, and then being restored into power. Now the rest of this is going to tell you how it's going to be restored, or who is going to restore it. He says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth. Now the first one came up out of the sea, the restless mass of humanity, when there was actually no government, no central government. People were just banding together trying to make the best of it. But this one comes up out of the earth. Now the earth represents the visible ruling element. And this one coming up out of the earth indicates that there are governments in existence that are operating when this beast is restored to power. Now, he beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. Okay, now this is a beastly organization with 2 horns. Now, horns symbolize power, but the 2 horns would indicate 2 localities of power. All right, so you've got to look for 2 nations who are going to work together to make one beastly organization. Now Daniel, the 2nd chapter of Daniel, gives us a clue when he says there's a king of iron and a king of clay that marry. Oh, when 2 people marry, the Bible says they are no longer 2 but 1 flesh. In this case, when the 2 marry, they become 1 beast, but still 2 horns, 2 localities of power. So it's fulfilled actually in Russia and the United States. And Yahweh gives us more clues as to why it is really Russia and the United States. We'll see when we get to the end of the chapter. Okay, and he says, and he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. In other words, these have the supreme authority on earth, the 2 superpowers, and they are the ones who cause you to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. In other words, they are the ones who restore the Pope to authority. Reading H.G. Wells, the historian, he says that the world will certainly destroy itself with its inventions, with its science, with its the horrible weapons that it's going to make. This was written in the 20s. He says the only hope of salvation is to make an organization similar to that of the Holy Roman Empire. It was the most successful organization on the face of the earth, and it lasted 1,000 years. So this people that have no hope, no understanding, no truth, they will actually seek that kind of a solution, trying to solve the world. But what they don't realize is that the union of Russia and the United States and the Pope, it's like putting a rattlesnake and a mongoose together. You know, they have nothing in common. Russia has politics as its head, and it controls commerce and religion. This country, the dollar is everything, commerce is everything, and politics and religion work for the dollar. So people, the big businessmen here, certainly don't want communism. They want to be free to steal as much as they can. They don't want anybody controlling them. So they really, and as far as religion is concerned, Russia doesn't care for any religion, only if it conforms to the state. And this country is the Protestant country primarily. They came to this country to flee religious persecution. So there's really nothing in common in these three. There's nothing that they have that is appealing to one another, other than they are the supreme authorities. The Catholic Church is the strongest church in the world. It's stronger than even any of the Eastern churches, or Buddhists, or anything. They have more members, and they are prevalent in some of the richest portions of the earth. So, it is the two-horned beast that restores the papacy to authority, the one whose deadly wound was healed. Now, verse 13 says, "And he doeth great wonders, that he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men." Now, fire is a symbol of enlightenment. This is the only type of light you had in those days. In other words, if you were in a dark room, you either lit a candle or lit a fire. We find that Abraham Lincoln, he studied by the light of the fireplace. This was the only light they had. They had no other light. So wherever there was fire, there was light. Making fire come down from heaven means enlightenment. Enlightenment symbolizes truth or understanding. In other words, he claims that the words which come down, which he speaks, come down from heaven. The understanding comes from heaven, that he is the receiver of God's precious light, precious truth. And he does this in order to deceive the people. So verse 14 says, "And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by means of these miracles, which he had power to do in the sight of the beast," or in behalf of the beast. Because he did these things, he was able to deceive the entire world that he was actually the one that could solve the problems of the world. We find that the problems are going to be so great that he's going to be wearied with a multitude of counsel that he has to give. Imagine a position where he has to solve the disputes like Israel and Egypt, and North and South Korea, and Vietnam, and things like this. He'd have to solve all these problems. He's bound to offend one if he or favor one and offend the other. And he keeps on doing this until everybody hates him. And by 3.5 years, they'll all hate him. And you're going to have a Watergate of the Vatican. He's going to be thoroughly exposed and thrown out. All right. He deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by means of these miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live. Now, when you make an image, the other translations say make a statue. A statue or an image is something that's an identical representation of someone else. In other words, it looks like him. Okay? So he says, let's make a statue of the former beast. Well, you can't make a statue of the beast because it's an organization. So making an identical representation of the former organization, they actually make an organization that's similar to the other. That's what they're speaking about, see? Okay? Yeah, so they repeat what they had once before. Now, if you just make a statue is dead. So if it's not alive, it can't do anything. So what good is a statue? But here it says they give life to this statue. See? Make an image of the beast which had the wound by a sword to live, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Okay, now if you make a statue of someone and you give it life, you've resurrected a person. You brought the same person. It looks just like him. Now you give it life. And it goes on and does the same thing that it did before. Well, what did it do before? It actually burned people at the stake. It killed them. It exiled people. So what did it do here? Cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Now, this is not always a literal killing. To be killed, a man that is dead is no longer active. He can no longer follow the pursuits that he followed when he was alive. For instance, a man that's alive is speaking. Okay, when he stops speaking, when he's forced to stop speaking, you hear no more from him, as though he was dead. See? So this could symbolize, and does symbolize, that he puts a stop to all activities, to all men who were active in pursuits which were contrary to his desires. So he stops everybody from speaking, and he alone has the say on earth. So things can go his way. And he calls all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. Okay, now, this is not a literal mark, but this symbolizes the branding. When you brand cattle, this says it's mine. Okay, you have your mark on it. So this mark means his mark. Now, putting it on the right hand means that your hand belongs to him, or that you will serve him physically in some way. Work for him, work as a policeman or something. Putting it on the forehead means that you will serve him in a mental capacity. You could be a scientist, or you could be an FBI agent. You could be anything that will serve him in a mental way, through intelligence. But at any rate, your mind and body must serve him. So the mark symbolizes the branding that you belong to him and that you will serve him. Now, and that no man might buy or sell except he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So you see, if anybody does not serve this beast, physically or mentally, you will not be able to buy or sell. If you can't buy or sell, it means you don't have the use of money, and it means you will not be able to work. You cannot have the facilities that are in the world if you do not serve the world. This is what it boils down to. In other words, he's going to put a supreme squeeze play. Now, how in the world are you going to endure if you can't work, if you can't buy, if you can't go to the grocery store and get groceries, you can't do anything. Okay? You're going to die out. So if you're going to stay here, you're going to have to obey him. That's all. That'll be just force. But the true Lord's people must remember that if they do obey him, they die. Because especially if you have the understanding. And we have the understanding. See? So must be a way out. This is why he says, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, let those who be in Judea, or my people, flee to the mountains. We have to go. We have to go because not only we won't be able to buy or sell, but right after that, when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction. And the cities of the nations fell. See? Everything's going down. One thing happens right after another, so we got to get out of here. And when it's planned right, it'll go fast. You know, the army is very efficient when they have to be. They can actually put up a town in a matter of days. You know, so we're going to have to move fast, and we will move fast. So it'll all be planned, and we'll have to get out of here. But Yahweh will bless us. Now, here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and the number is 666. Now, the Old English, or 660 and 6. Now, there's a contradiction here, because it says, you notice it says, here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast. Not of the man, of a beast. For it is the number of a man, it says. And his number is 666, or other translations say its number is 666. But this is a better translation, and it has this to say. You notice the difference here. It says, there is wisdom hidden here. Let every one of intelligence calculate the beast's number, for it indicates or points to a certain man, and its number, the beast number, is 666, the entire beast. See, the man is not the beast. The man is part of the beast. He's the head, the Pope. The entire beast is made up of Russia, United States, and the Pope. Now, if you know the right man, and if you know who the two nations that make it up, it totals 666. Do you have that?